What's up everybody, this is Waterchanges, and today I want to talk a little bit about Nano Reef tanks and why you should do small water changes in your Nano Reef tank. Now, some people do actually do water changes on larger tanks, but I think it's very important to notice that it's also very important to do it in small tanks, especially in small tanks. And the reason for this is that when we're keeping a saltwater tank, what we're trying to do is actually to create a biological ecosystem that can to some point actually run itself. That is by live rock, proper filtration, fish that benefit each other, corals that benefit each other. Everything in your tank has to sort of benefit to the same goal, so that you will have some corals like senior, for example, that are very good for filtrating the water of nasty things. It will basically make sure that your tank will stay clean and that it will run properly. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about that today, because in a small tank, in my opinion, to keep this biological ecosystem running, you have to actually do water changes, because it's just not possible to keep the ecosystem running without water changes to some degree in a small tank. Or well, maybe it is. I've seen people who have done it, but it's very hard. You really need to know what you're doing to do that. So first of all, the best thing to do is get some proper salt. It's very important to get some salt that has the right chemicals in it. I recommend Reef crystals. It works great. That's what I use for my tank right here. You can see everything is looking really gorgeous right now. I do not know why my Kenya tree decided to lay down right now, but whatever. So anyway, it's important to have the right amount of calcium, magnesium, iodine, strontium, different things like that in your tank to make sure that your corals will grow as intended. And actually, what I've experimented with here over the last couple of months is changing the salt gradually, and the thing about this is that it actually does a huge difference. If your tank is used to one type of salt with some specific amounts of different trace elements, actually changing that salt over to something else that maybe doesn't have the same amount of trace elements and isn't the same type of salt, that is definitely going to make a huge difference. Your corals are actually going to react to that, as well as your fish, so be very careful with that. And I was very close to actually killing some of my corals by using the wrong salt, but because I couldn't afford the other salt, or well, I could afford it, but they didn't have anything in stock, I had to use some other salt for at least a month. So I just used Instant Ocean, and what happened was that the corals would close down because it wouldn't get the right amount of trace elements, and the salt was changing so quickly that they really couldn't adapt to it. And I've said in many videos that corals are great at adapting to things, and that is very true. Corals are very good at adapting to things, but you have to be very careful with what you do, and quick changes like that. They can adapt very slowly, but not very fast. That is a very important thing to keep in mind. Also, what I would say is that reef crystals works really well, especially in small tanks, because if you do water change every week, I do a 10% water change, 10 to 15% water change every single week. I just did a water change yesterday actually. And the reason I do this is because this way I do not need to dose any sort of trace elements. In bigger tanks you can actually get away with not doing any sort of water changes, because bigger tanks are more tolerant of that, and the nutrients will actually get broken down before it even gets to a very lethal point. So it's very important to make sure that that in small tanks that you do water changes, because this way you're going to pull out some of the nutrients, but you're also going to transfer new nutrients in the form of trace elements into your tank, and this is going to be enough for your corals to thrive. Maybe not for SPS corals. I would admit that SPS corals probably need some extra dosage of calcium, and some other things, but you know, you can go research about that yourself. But for small tanks, I would not really recommend keeping SPS corals, because it's very hard to keep SPS corals in a small tank, to be honest. Like, I've seen many people who have done it and have done it successfully, made a really beautiful SPS tank, but it's just very complicated, and it's a lot of work, especially in a small tank. So if you want SPS corals, go to a bigger tank, like at least 50 gallons, because at that point you will make sure that, first of all, the nutrients level won't swing as much, and that is also one of the things that will happen with water changes, is that the nutrient levels will actually gradually swing up and down, and this will happen because of the fact that you know, when you change water out, you're going to pull a certain amount out of what the tank is used to, and then you put some new things in that doesn't have those nutrients, and it will just change around. It will just be completely crazy, especially if you use RDI water, which you should do. It can actually cause some problems. Especially for, well, that's mostly for SPS corals, because SPS corals don't really, they're one of those corals that are not very good at adapting. They can adapt, but in like a very long time span, so you have to be sure that you know, you're very careful with doing changes in your tank if you keep SPS corals. But for soft corals and LPS corals, some few LPS corals might also be a little bit sensitive. But I'm talking in general right now, you know, Duncan corals, Euphilia, some acans, you know, zoanthids, different things like that, Xenia, Calastria, you know, different normal sort of corals. They will actually adapt quite well to these changes. One thing you might need to notice is that when you first get them into your tank, you need to get them used to the amount of you know, nutrients that are going to swing every now and again, and the different trace elements, how much they are going to swing. You know, they need a couple of weeks to adapt to that, but they will adapt really well, especially senior corals, Kenya tree corals. A lot of different soft corals will actually adapt within about 1 week. It's pretty amazing. As for fish are a lot more hardy when it comes to the water changes. They actually quite enjoy it, because whenever I do water changes, I do a good rinsing on the glass to make sure that everything looks clean. My yellow tank gets really heavy because of it. He will start eating you know, all the different algae that I've scraped off of the glass. So yeah, that's really awesome. But in a small tank, this is going to be really effective. You can see here, after I've done a little bit of bigger water changes, I'm starting to move up to the 15% water changes, but I'm not going higher than that. I used to only do 10% water changes, and you can see here, after a couple of months, since I've made my last video, you can see just the corals are growing fantastically well. You know, they are doing some great growth here. And it's actually because of the water changes and the amounts of trace elements that get into the water, as well as the sufficient amount of lighting, and also the low amount of nutrients. But one thing I would say is that because I do have a little bit of high nutrients in here, you can see the senior corals are really spreading out. But what is really amazing is that when I put these senior coral in here, my water started getting a lot more clean, because it will actually filtrate the water quite a bit. You know, senior corals are very good at doing so, and the rest of the corals seem to really enjoy that. And you can see here my Kenya trees are opening up really nicely, except for this one that's kind of turning back, but you can still see its polyps kind of opening up. The Duncan coral has made at least 10 new heads. The frog spawn is just getting crazy. I do not know what to do with this thing at this point, because it's just getting so big that it almost can't be in here, but that's awesome. The Calastria is also growing great as usual. Still a very slow grower, but you know, it has started 2 new heads. You can see one of them down here, and then there's one in the back as well, so it's really cool. So yeah, you can see the fish are enjoying it, like they also really enjoy the water changes. So yeah, that's all what I have for you guys in this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I know it's been some time since I've made my last aquarium video. You know, I've had it on my smooth newts, which are still alive, by the way. They're doing quite well, but I need to I need to do some few changes to the vivarium before I can show you guys that again. For freshwater videos, I do not expect a lot of freshwater videos coming up very soon, but I'll try to get some up as soon as possible. And I do have a little surprise for you guys in the next coming weeks. So stay tuned for that, guys. It'll be really awesome. I'll make a lot of videos about that specific topic that I will get a new animal. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and see you guys in another video.